In today's story, a woman discovers that her inheritance has been reduced by a six-figure family loan she never agreed to repay. Before we begin, settle in and enjoy tonight's story. My parents invented a loan I owed the family. The letter said I owed my family £140,000. It arrived 3 weeks after my grandfather's funeral inside an envelope from the solicitors administering his estate. I opened it at my kitchen table, expecting a routine update about probate. Instead, I found a statement showing my inheritance had been reduced from £210,000 to £70,000. The missing amount appeared on one line: repayment of family loan, £140,000. I read it several times because the figure was so large that I assumed I had misunderstood the document. I had never borrowed £140,000 from anyone. I called the solicitor, whose name appeared at the bottom. She told me the deduction had been made under instructions from the estate's executors. The executors were my parents. According to the paperwork they had supplied, my grandfather had advanced me money 12 years earlier to help me buy my first flat. The loan was described as interest-free but repayable from my eventual inheritance. I had received money when I bought the flat. It had been £50,000, not £140,000, and every person in my family had called it a gift. My grandfather had written, "For your first home," inside the card he gave me. My parents had raised glasses at dinner and said he wanted to help me establish some security. There had been no repayment schedule, no loan agreement, and no conversation about deducting anything from my inheritance. I asked the solicitor to send me the evidence. She hesitated. Then she said the executors had provided a family accounts schedule showing the original advance, later additions, and accumulated adjustments. Later additions for what? She said she could not interpret the entries for me, but she would send the schedule. The document arrived 10 minutes later. It was a spreadsheet. The first entry was the £50,000 transfer for my flat. Below it were amounts I recognized but had never considered: loans, university support, help with legal fees during my divorce, money my parents paid toward a new boiler, and several smaller transfers made while I was between jobs. The spreadsheet treated all of them as debts. It also included £28,000 described as parental support during business setup. My parents had not given me £28,000 when I started my business. They had given me £6,000. The remaining £22,000 appeared to be a projection of what they believed my rent and living costs would have been if I had not temporarily moved back into their house. They had converted the value of letting me sleep in my childhood bedroom into a loan. At the bottom of the spreadsheet was a note: amounts reviewed and accepted by beneficiary. Beside it were my initials. They were not my initials. They looked almost correct, but the second letter had the same flat top my mother used when she wrote my name on birthday cards. I called my father. He answered cheerfully and asked whether I had received the estate statement. I asked why it said I owed £140,000. His voice changed immediately. He said it should not have come as a surprise. I told him it was the first time anyone had described my grandfather's help as a loan. He said that was not true. He claimed the family had always understood that substantial gifts would be balanced during inheritance. "That isn't a loan," I said. "That's equalization." He told me not to get caught up in terminology. I asked why the spreadsheet included money my parents had spent rather than money from my grandfather. He said my grandfather had reimbursed them over the years. I asked for bank records. He said records that old would be difficult to find. Then I asked about the initials. There was a long silence. My father said I had reviewed the figures with my mother several years earlier. I told him I had never seen the spreadsheet. He said I might not remember because it had been an emotional period after my divorce. That was the moment the conversation stopped being a disagreement about accounting. My parents were not mistaken. They were building a version of my memory that supported their documents. I told my father not to distribute the estate until I had taken advice. He became angry. He said delaying probate would affect my younger brother, Oliver, who was waiting for his share to clear debts on his house. I asked how much Oliver was receiving. My father said the beneficiaries' positions were private. I reminded him that I was one of the beneficiaries and that he had just used Oliver's finances to pressure me. He said Oliver's circumstances were irrelevant. They were not irrelevant. Oliver had always been the reason family money became complicated. He was 4 years younger than me and had spent most of his adult life moving between ambitious projects: a clothing brand, a mobile coffee business, property sourcing, cryptocurrency consulting. Each one began with a family announcement and ended with my parents quietly paying someone. Whenever I asked how much they had given him, my mother said families were not companies and she did not keep score. Apparently, they had been keeping score for me. The estate statement said I owed my family £140,000. The spreadsheet included money my grandfather gave me for my first flat, help during my divorce, and even the value of living in my parents' spare room. At the bottom, it claimed I had reviewed and accepted the figures. The initials beside that sentence were not mine. I contacted a probate solicitor named Helen Ward. She told me not to accuse anyone of forgery until we understood the legal structure of the estate. Executors had duties to all beneficiaries, but they could also recover genuine debts owed to the deceased. The central questions were simple. Who had provided the money? Was it a loan or a gift? And what evidence showed I had agreed to repay it? The spreadsheet alone was weak evidence. The false initials made it more concerning, but Helen warned that proving who wrote them would be difficult. She asked whether my grandfather had left personal papers. He had kept almost everything: receipts, birthday cards, bank statements, warranty documents, even instruction manuals for appliances he no longer owned. After my grandmother died, he had moved into assisted living. My parents cleared his house and stored his records in their garage. I emailed them requesting access. My mother replied instead of my father. She said the papers had already been reviewed and most had been destroyed because they contained private information. I asked when. She said shortly after the funeral. That was less than a month earlier. They had destroyed financial records while acting as executors of an estate that supposedly owed them money. Helen sent a formal letter requesting copies of all documents connected to the alleged loan, including bank statements, correspondence, accounting notes, and any written acknowledgement by me. My parents' solicitor responded with a 2-page memorandum signed by my grandfather. The document was dated 11 years earlier. It said that money advanced to family members should be considered when dividing the estate so that each grandchild was treated fairly. My name did not appear in it, neither did the word loan. It was a general statement of intention. My parents' solicitor argued that the memorandum supported the spreadsheet and showed my grandfather intended lifetime advances to be deducted. Helen disagreed. She explained that taking previous gifts into account was not the same as recovering a legally enforceable debt. If my grandfather wanted his executors to equalize lifetime gifts, his will should have said so clearly. His will did not. It divided the remaining estate equally between me and Oliver. I read the will 3 times. There were no deductions, no balancing clause, and no reference to previous gifts. That should have resolved the issue. Instead, my parents produced another document. It was a letter addressed to them, supposedly written by my grandfather 8 months before he died. The letter said he trusted them to correct the imbalance between me and Oliver because I had received considerable assistance with property, education, and personal difficulties. It said Oliver had received comparatively little. I almost laughed when I read that sentence. Oliver had lived rent-free in a flat my parents owned for 6 years. They had paid off one of his business loans. My grandfather had funded his postgraduate course and given him money toward 2 failed ventures. If Oliver had received comparatively little, then the comparison excluded most of his life. The letter was signed. The signature looked like my grandfather's, but the language did not. He never used phrases like correct the imbalance or personal difficulties. He would have written my divorce, not hidden it inside formal wording. I asked Helen whether the letter could have been written by someone else. She said possibly, but suspicious language was not proof. We needed records. I started with my own. I downloaded 12 years of bank statements and searched every payment from my parents and grandfather. I found the 50,000 for my flat, 6,000 for my business, 4,000 after my divorce, 2,000 for the boiler. The total was £62,000, not 140. I also found references in the payment descriptions: home gift, new start, boiler help, none said loan. Then I searched old emails. My grandfather rarely used email, but my mother wrote constantly. In one message from the week I bought my flat, she said, "Grandad is so pleased he can give you the deposit while he is alive to see you enjoy it." In another, she wrote, "This is not something you need to worry about paying back." That sentence was enough to challenge the largest entry. But the spreadsheet still bothered me. The formatting was modern. The fonts, colors, and formulas looked like one of my mother's household budget templates. I checked the file properties. The spreadsheet had been created 16 months earlier. My grandfather had already been in assisted living by then, with deteriorating eyesight and no access to a computer. The listed author was Oliver. I sent a screenshot to Helen. She asked whether Oliver had any legitimate role in the estate accounts. He did not. He was a beneficiary, not an executor. Helen wrote to my parents' solicitor demanding the original file history and an explanation of Oliver's involvement. My mother called me that evening. She said I was humiliating the family over money. I told her the family had invented a debt in my name. She said invented was a cruel word. The spreadsheet was simply a record of support I had received. I asked why Oliver created it. She said he helped because he was good with computers. Oliver once paid someone to reinstall a printer driver. I asked why my initials appeared on a document I had never seen. My mother said she had added them after a conversation we had in her kitchen. What conversation? She said I had agreed that Grandad's help should be considered fairly. I remembered the conversation she meant. It happened after my divorce. I had told her that if my grandfather left more money to Oliver because he had helped me buy a flat, I would understand. That was not permission to create a loan. It was not permission to include my parents' money. And it was not permission to sign my initials. My mother began crying. She said Oliver was in serious financial trouble and could lose his house. There it was, not fairness, not my grandfather's wishes, Oliver's house. I asked how much debt he had. She said she did not know the exact figure. I asked whether his inheritance had already been promised to a lender. She did not answer. The supposed loan was not designed merely to reduce my share. It was designed to increase his before the estate was distributed. The total estate available to us was £420,000. Without deductions, we would receive £210,000 each. Under my parents' calculation, I would receive £70,000. Oliver would receive £350,000. The alleged debt did not return money to the estate neutrally. It redirected almost every pound to him. I confronted Oliver at his house. He met me outside and refused to let me in. I asked why he had created the spreadsheet. He said Mum gave him the figures and asked him to organize them. I asked whether he knew she intended to use it against my inheritance. He said the word against was dramatic. Then he repeated the family argument. I had received help earlier, he needed help now, and Grandad wanted us treated equally. I asked how much our parents had given him. He said that was different. I asked why. Because mine went wrong. He said it as though failure transformed gifts into necessities. My flat had increased in value, so the help I received counted permanently. His businesses had collapsed, so the money given to him disappeared from the family ledger along with them. I asked what would happen if he received only £210,000. He said he would lose the house and probably face bankruptcy. He had remortgaged twice to invest in a property development scheme run by a friend. The development stalled after planning permission was refused. Oliver then borrowed privately to keep paying interest. He owed more than £300,000. My parents had already guaranteed part of it. That meant his bankruptcy could affect them too. The spreadsheet was not only protecting Oliver, it was protecting their retirement. Without the invented loan, My brother and I would each receive £210,000. With it, I would receive £70,000 and he would receive £350,000. He had remortgaged his house to fund a failed property scheme, and my parents had guaranteed part of the debt. They were not balancing the inheritance. They were using mine to stop all three of them from losing money. Oliver told me I could afford to accept less. I owned my flat. My bookkeeping practice was stable. I had no children. He had a wife, 2 young sons, and a mortgage. I asked whether that made my inheritance family emergency funding. He said it made me the person with options. That sentence stayed with me. My parents had always described me as responsible. I thought it was praise. In practice, it meant I was expected to absorb every consequence because I was less likely to collapse. I told Oliver I was challenging the deduction. He called me selfish. Then he said something that changed the case. "You already got more than Granddad planned to give you." I asked what he meant. He said my grandfather had wanted to change the will after moving into assisted living. According to Oliver, he planned to leave Oliver a larger share because I had received the flat deposit. I asked how Oliver knew. He said Granddad told Mum. I asked whether Granddad had spoken to a solicitor. Oliver said the family letter was supposed to deal with it. The suspicious letter had not been created to document an existing loan. It had been created as a substitute for a will change that never happened. That distinction mattered. My parents might genuinely have believed they were carrying out my grandfather's intentions, but belief did not allow them to rewrite his will after his death. Helen applied to prevent distribution of the estate until the dispute was resolved. My parents opposed the application. Their solicitor argued that delay would cause financial hardship and unnecessary costs. The court ordered them to preserve the estate funds and provide a complete account of all lifetime transfers made to both beneficiaries. For the first time, they had to produce Oliver's records too. The results were worse than I expected. Over 14 years, my parents and grandfather had transferred at least £186,000 to Oliver. That included university fees, rent, business funding, mortgage payments, and payments to creditors. My documented support totaled $62,000. Even if every payment to me had been a loan, Oliver had received 3 times more. My parents responded by reclassifying his payments. His university fees were education, not support. His free housing was use of a family asset, not a transfer. Business money was investment, not a gift. Mortgage payments were emergency assistance. Every payment to Oliver belonged to a category that did not count. Every payment to me became debt. Helen described the accounting as result-driven. The figures had not produced the conclusion. The conclusion had determined which figures were included. Then we obtained the metadata for the family letter. The document had been printed 8 months before my grandfather's death, as stated, but the text file used to create it had been modified 3 weeks after his funeral. The signature was genuine. My grandfather had signed a blank sheet. My father admitted that my grandfather sometimes signed blank pages because his eyesight made it difficult to review routine forms. My mother had typed the inheritance letter above one of those signatures after he died. She claimed the wording reflected conversations they had genuinely had with him. That was the major reveal, but it did not feel triumphant. It felt like watching the floor disappear under my family. The spreadsheet was not merely misleading. The letter was manufactured. My initials were false, and both executors had used those documents to alter the effect of a valid will. Helen advised me that we now had grounds to seek their removal as executors and refer the documents for investigation. I called my parents before she filed anything. I gave them one opportunity: withdraw the deduction, distribute the estate according to the will. Provide a written admission that I never owed the alleged loan. They could still help Oliver afterward using their own share of family assets, but they could not take mine. My father said they did not have enough assets left to save him. I said that was not my decision. My mother told me Oliver's children could lose their home. I asked why that responsibility belonged to me rather than Oliver, his lenders, or the adults who guaranteed his borrowing. She said, because I was his sister. I told her he was also my brother, and none of them had treated that relationship as a reason to tell me the truth. They refused, so Helen filed the application. The letter carrying my grandfather's signature had supposedly been written before he died. The signature was real, but the computer file had been modified 3 weeks after his funeral. My grandfather had sometimes signed blank sheets because his eyesight was poor. My mother had typed the inheritance instructions above one of those signatures after he was already dead. The hearing was not dramatic. There was no shouting, no sudden confession from the witness box. There were bundles of bank statements, file histories, email printouts, and questions my parents could not answer consistently. My mother insisted she had been carrying out my grandfather's wishes. The judge asked why, if those wishes were clear, she had not disclosed the altered file or the false initials. She said she had been afraid I would misunderstand. The judge said concealment was not a method of preventing misunderstanding. My father tried to separate himself from the spreadsheet, but emails showed that he had sent Oliver the figures and asked him to make the total sufficient to restore balance. One email contained the sentence that ended any remaining ambiguity. If we leave it exactly as the will says, Oliver cannot survive. The court removed my parents as executors and appointed an independent administrator. The alleged loan was rejected. The estate was divided equally. My parents were ordered to pay a substantial portion of the legal costs personally because their conduct had created the dispute. The documents were referred for further review, although neither of them ultimately received a custodial sentence. My mother admitted creating the letter and adding my initials. My father admitted approving the plan and presenting the documents as genuine. Oliver received his £210,000. It was not enough. His lender forced the sale of his house 6 months later. After the mortgage, private debt, and fees were paid, there was almost nothing left. He moved with his wife and children into a rented house outside the city. My parents sold a holiday cottage they had inherited from my grandmother to cover their guarantees and legal costs. They blamed me for both outcomes. My mother sent a final message saying I had protected money I did not need at the expense of people who did. I did not reply. The truth was more complicated than that. I did not need the inheritance to survive, but that did not make the debt real. It did not make the altered letter genuine, and it did not make Oliver's failed investments my responsibility. I used some of the money to pay off the remaining mortgage on my flat. I placed most of the rest into savings and pension investments. For months, I felt guilty every time I looked at the balance. Then I found the card my grandfather gave me when he helped with the deposit. It had been inside an old box of property documents. His handwriting was uneven but clear, "For your first home. Enjoy it while I am still here to see it. This is a gift, not an account to be settled later." I sent a copy to my parents. My father responded with one sentence. He said Grandad had not understood how much help I would receive afterward. Maybe that was true. People can change their minds. Families can become resentful. A gift that feels generous in 1 year can look unfair 12 years later. But my grandfather had written a will. He had years to change it. He did not. My parents now say they have accepted the outcome, though we rarely speak. They see Oliver and his children regularly. I am invited to large family events only when excluding me would require an explanation. At my aunt's birthday dinner, one relative told me I had been legally correct, but morally inflexible. I asked whether she would have surrendered £140,000 based on a spreadsheet created by the person receiving it. She said families sometimes require sacrifice. I asked why the sacrifice always had to come from the person who had not created the problem. She changed the subject. Oliver contacted me once, almost a year after the hearing. He did not apologize. He asked whether I would lend him £30,000 for a deposit on another house. He said it would help his children regain stability. He offered to sign a formal agreement and repay me monthly. For several minutes, I stared at the message. Then I replied that I did not lend money to family. He accused me of enjoying the irony. I did not. That was the part he never understood. The case had not taught me to value money over family. It had taught me that calling something family does not stop it from becoming a transaction. It only makes the terms easier to hide.
You've been listening to Low Light Stories, original fiction for late night listening. New stories are added regularly, so subscribe if you'd like to hear the next one. Thanks for listening.